Hey there, story seekers. Welcome back to the channel, where history isn't just dates and dusty textbooks, it's drama, courage, heartbreak, and triumph. Today, we're stepping into the swamps, bayous, and muddy fields of early 19th century Louisiana for a tale that changed the course of American identity. It's January 1815. The War of 1812 is technically over, but nobody told the British. What follows is one of the most lopsided, legendary, and utterly unexpected battles in U.S. history, the Battle of New Orleans. So grab your tricorn hats, settle in, and let us travel back to a time when America was still finding its voice and proving it could shout. The year is 1814. The United States has been at war with Great Britain for over 2 years, a conflict born from trade restrictions, impressment of American sailors, and lingering tensions from the Revolutionary War. Though often called America's Second War of Independence, the War of 1812 had been messy, inconsistent, and deeply unpopular in parts of the country, especially New England. By late 1814, both sides were exhausted. Peace negotiations had already begun in Ghent, Belgium, and on December 24th, diplomats signed the Treaty of Ghent, officially ending hostilities. But here's the catch. News traveled slowly in the age of sail. No telegraphs, no internet, just ships crossing the Atlantic, vulnerable to weather and enemy patrols. So while peace had been declared in Europe, thousands of miles away, armies were still preparing for battle. Enter New Orleans, strategically perched at the mouth of the Mississippi River. New Orleans wasn't just any city, it was the gateway to the entire American interior. Control it, and you controlled the flow of goods from the vast western territories. For the British, capturing New Orleans meant crippling America's economy and potentially reclaiming influence over former colonies. For the Americans, losing it would be catastrophic. And so, in December 1814, a massive British fleet, carrying over 10,000 seasoned troops, many of them veterans of the Napoleonic Wars, sailed into the Gulf of Mexico. Their target, the Crescent City. On the other side stood Major General Andrew Jackson. Jackson was a man forged in fire, a frontiersman from the Carolinas. He'd survived smallpox as a boy, fought in duels, and earned a fearsome reputation during campaigns against Native American tribes in the Southeast. He was tough, decisive, and fiercely patriotic, but also hot-tempered and unyielding. When word reached him that the British were coming, Jackson raced to New Orleans, declaring martial law and rallying every able-bodied man he could find. His army was a patchwork of unlikely allies: Tennessee and Kentucky militiamen, free men of color, many of whom were promised freedom or payment, Choctaw warriors, local pirates led by the infamous Jean Lafitte, and even a battalion of U.S. Marines. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and vastly less experienced than their British foes. But what they lacked in polish, they made up for in grit and geography. Jackson knew the terrain. The British would have to advance through narrow strips of land flanked by swamps and the Mississippi River. He chose his defensive line carefully, a mile-long stretch along the Rodriguez Canal, just south of the city. There, his men dug trenches, built earthworks, and mounted artillery. Cotton bales, ironically, the very symbol of Southern commerce, were stacked as makeshift barricades. The British, under the command of General Sir Edward Pakenham, arrived confident. These were men who had defeated Napoleon's armies. They expected little resistance from what they saw as an undisciplined colonial rabble. On December 28th, they launched a probing attack, but Jackson's forces held firm. Over the next week, skirmishes flared, but the main assault was delayed by fog, rain, and logistical snags. Then came January 8, 1815. Before dawn, the British formed into tight, disciplined columns, redcoats gleaming in the pale winter light. They advanced across open fields toward Jackson's line, drums beating, colors flying. It was a textbook European maneuver, perfect for the battlefields of Europe, but disastrous in the Louisiana mud. What followed was carnage. American cannons roared, tearing holes in the British ranks. Muskets fired from behind the earthworks with devastating accuracy. The British, unable to flank the Americans due to the swamps on either side, were funneled into a killing zone. Within minutes, hundreds fell. General Pakenham, riding at the front, was shot from his horse and died shortly after. His second-in-command was also killed. Chaos erupted. In less than 30 minutes, the battle was effectively over. The British suffered over 2,000 casualties, nearly a quarter of their force, including the deaths of their top 3 generals. American losses, just 13 dead, 39 wounded. It was one of the most lopsided victories in military history. And yet, the war was already over. Unbeknownst to both sides, the Treaty of Ghent had been signed 2 weeks earlier. News wouldn't reach New Orleans until mid-February, so this bloody, brilliant victory had been fought for a peace that already existed. But here's the twist. Though it didn't change the war's outcome, the Battle of New Orleans changed everything else. In a young nation hungry for heroes and unity, Andrew Jackson became a legend overnight. Newspapers hailed him as Old Hickory, tough as wood, unbreakable. The victory erased the sting of earlier American defeats and gave the country a renewed sense of pride. It proved that the United States could stand toe-to-toe with the world's greatest military power and win decisively. For New Orleans itself, the battle cemented its place in the American story. Once a French and Spanish colonial outpost, it was now undeniably American. The diverse coalition that defended it, white frontiersmen, black soldiers, native warriors, and privateers, reflected the messy, multicultural reality of the early republic, even if that diversity would soon be ignored or suppressed in official narratives. As for the British, they never again attempted a major invasion of the continental United States. The war end, this final, brutal clash, marked the end of serious foreign threats to American sovereignty. Years later, Andrew Jackson would ride that wave of fame all the way to the White House, becoming the 7th President of the United States and reshaping American democracy in his image, sometimes for better, often for worse. But in January 1815, he was simply the general who saved New Orleans, and the people of the city never forgot. Today, if you walk through the Chalmette Saddlefield now, part of the Jean Lafitte National Historical Park, you can still see the gentle slope where Jackson's men stood, the quiet fields where redcoats fell like autumn leaves. There's a monument there, simple and solemn, honoring those who fought. And every January 8th, reenactors gathered to remember the day America, against all odds, stood its ground. The Battle of New Orleans may have been fought after the war ended, but its echoes shaped a nation. It reminded Americans that they were more than a collection of states. They were a people capable of extraordinary courage, united not by blood, but by belief. And sometimes, in history, that's enough. Thanks for joining me on this journey through one of America's most dramatic and ironic battles. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss another chapter from the past. History isn't just about what happened, it's about why it matters. And trust me, there are so many more stories waiting to be told. Until next time, keep wondering, keep exploring, and remember, the past is never really past. See you soon.